built from the exact same chemistry discovered by monks who were only looking for a way to live forever. It is a strange kind of irony that the search for eternal life produced one of history's most efficient instruments of death. What began as three simple ingredients, sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter mixed by hand seeking to defy mortality, ended up becoming the very thing that could end it in an instant. Right now, there are more privately owned firearms on Earth than there are people in the United States and Russia combined. In America alone, guns outnumber citizens. Every 90 minutes, somewhere in the world, a new firearm rolls off an assembly line and enters human hands. And yet, this object that shapes elections, borders, laws, and everyday fear did not begin as a weapon at all. It began as an accident, a search for immortality that stumbled, instead, into fire. How did a mixture cooked up by monks chasing eternal life become a device that ended the age of castles, toppled empires, and now sits in 1 out of every 3 American households? How did a tube that once took 2 minutes to reload become a machine that can fire 10 bullets in a single second? And why, after more than 1,000 years of refinement, is a gun still one of the most contested objects on the planet? To understand that, we have to go back, not to a battlefield, not to a king's court, but to a quiet laboratory in 9th century China, where a group of alchemists were not trying to build a weapon at all. They were trying to cheat death. Around the 9th century, during the Tang Dynasty, Chinese alchemists were obsessed with a single goal, finding the elixir of life. Emperors funded these experiments, hoping some combination of minerals could grant them immortality. In their search, alchemists began mixing sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter, a naturally occurring mineral known as potassium nitrate, instead of eternal life. They found something else entirely. The mixture ignited violently. Some accounts describe alchemists losing eyebrows, beards, and even burning down buildings during these experiments. The earliest known written warning about this substance appears in a 9th century Taoist text, cautioning alchemists against combining these 3 ingredients, because the resulting fire had already scorched hands and burned down houses. This was the birth of gunpowder, not as a tool of war, but as a dangerous byproduct of a spiritual quest. For decades, this black powder was used mostly for entertainment and ritual, fireworks to frighten evil spirits, festival displays, symbolic celebrations. But China in the 10th and 11th centuries was a land fractured by war. The Song dynasty faced constant threats from northern rivals the Khitan Liao and later the Jurchen Jin. Military necessity has a way of turning curiosities into weapons, and gunpowder was no exception. By the 11th century, Chinese military engineers had documented gunpowder formulas in the Wujing Zongyao, a military compendium from 1044 that describes different gunpowder mixtures for different purposes, some for propulsion, some for incendiary bombs, some for smoke and poison weapons. This is a crucial reflective moment. Humanity did not invent gunpowder to make guns. Guns emerged because someone eventually asked whether the explosive force could be aimed. The first true ancestor of the gun was not a gun, it was a spear. Chinese soldiers in the 10th century began attaching bamboo tubes filled with gunpowder to the ends of spears. When ignited, these fire lances shot flames, sparks, and sometimes shrapnel at enemies, functioning almost like a short-range flamethrower fused to a melee weapon. Archaeological and textual evidence places fire lances in active use by at least 950 AD, making them among the earliest gunpowder weapons ever deployed on a battlefield. The next leap happened when someone realized a bamboo tube didn't need shrapnel packed loosely around it. It could contain a projectile that the explosion itself would launch. This was the conceptual birth of the barrel. Bamboo eventually gave way to hardened paper, then bronze and iron, because commanders needed tubes that wouldn't burn away or explode in their own soldiers' hands. The earliest surviving actual firearm in the world is the Heilongjiang hand cannon, a bronze weapon unearthed in China and dated to around 1288. It weighs over 3 kilograms and would have been fired by resting on a support and touching a burning wick to a small hole, a touch hole, that ignited the powder inside. This single object, sitting quietly in a museum today, represents the moment fire and metal fuse into something entirely new, a portable weapon that could kill from a distance with the pull of a spark. Here is a detail worth pausing on. For nearly 300 years after that first hand cannon, firearms barely changed. They were heavy, wildly inaccurate, and slower to reload than a bow. A skilled English longbowman in the 14th century could fire 6 arrows in the time it took a gunner to reload once. So why did guns eventually win? Because a gun required almost no lifetime of training. A longbowman needed a decade of physical conditioning. A gunner needed an afternoon afternoon. That single fact of democratization of lethal force would end up reshaping armies, class structures, and the very idea of who was allowed to hold power. Gunpowder technology did not stay in China. It traveled the Silk Road, carried by merchants, diplomats, and the Mongol armies who conquered vast stretches of Asia and Europe in the 13th century. Historians widely agree that the Mongol invasions were a critical bridge, exposing the Islamic world and eventually Europe to gunpowder weapons. In the Islamic world, particularly in the Mamluk Sultanate and later the Ottoman Empire, engineers refined the hand cannon into more effective forms. The Ottomans became especially skilled with siege artillery massive cannons, capable of reducing stone walls to rubble. This mattered enormously in 1453, when Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II used enormous bronze cannons, reportedly designed by a Hungarian engineer named Orban, to breach the seemingly impenetrable walls of Constantinople. A city that had withstood sieges for over 1,000 years fell in weeks. The message to the rest of the world was unmistakable. The age of the fortress was ending. Meanwhile, in Europe, independent innovation was accelerating. By the early 1400s, European gunsmiths had recorded formulas for gunpowder in manuscripts, and hand cannons known as Hakenbuks or harquebus began appearing across Germany, France, and Spain. Around the 1420s, an ingenious modification emerged, the matchlock mechanism. Instead of the soldier manually touching a burning wick to the touch hole, an awkward process that made aiming nearly impossible to matchlock used a spring-loaded arm called a serpentine to bring the burning core to the powder automatically when the trigger was pulled. For the first time, a soldier could hold a weapon with both hands, aim, and fire in one motion. Different regions solved the same core problem: how to make firearms reliable in strikingly different ways. In Japan, firearms arrived later through Portuguese traders who landed on Tanegashima Island in 1543. Japanese smiths reverse-engineered the matchlock arquebus with remarkable speed, and within decades Japan was producing more firearms than most of Europe. The daimyo Oda Nobunaga famously deployed thousands of matchlock gunners in coordinated volley fire at the Battle of Nagashino in 1575, shattering the cavalry charges of his rivals and proving that disciplined gunfire could defeat traditional samurai warfare. In the Islamic gunpowder empires, the Ottomans, the Safavids of Persia, and the Mughals of India, firearms were integrated into elite infantry corps like the Ottoman Janissaries, who became renowned for their firearm discipline as early as the 15th century. Each civilization took the same basic chemistry and shaped around its own military culture, its own metallurgy, its own battlefield needs. The gun was becoming a universal language of power, spoken in different dialects across the world. It's difficult to overstate how thoroughly the gun altered the structure of human civilization, because its impact went far beyond the battlefield. Consider the medieval European knight. For centuries, warfare in Europe had been dominated by armored aristocrats on horseback, men whose social status was inseparable from their ability to fight. Full-plate armor could deflect swords and arrows with relative ease, but gunpowder weapons, especially as cannons and later muskets grew more powerful, could punch through steel plate that had taken master armorers months to forge. A peasant with a few weeks of training and a gun could now kill a nobleman who had trained his entire life for combat. This was not just a military shift, it was a social earthquake. The feudal logic that organized European society for 1,000 years, where martial skill and birthright determined power, began to crumble. Castles suffered a similar fate. Walls that had withstood catapults and battering rams for centuries could be reduced to gravel by cannon fire in hours, as Constantinople had demonstrated. Kingdoms had to rethink defense entirely, moving towards star-shaped fortifications with angled walls designed specifically to deflect and survive cannon fire, a defensive innovation directly caused by the offensive power of gunpowder. Guns also transformed colonialism and global trade. European powers, having spent over a century refining firearms through constant warfare among themselves, arrived in the Americas, Africa, and parts of Asia with a decisive technological edge. Firearms became both tools of conquest and objects of trade, exchanged for land, resources, and, tragically, in the transatlantic slave trade, for human beings. The gun did not just change how wars were fought, it reshaped global power itself, tilting the balance toward whichever civilizations mastered metallurgy and chemistry fastest. And here is a sobering reflection worth sitting with. For the first time in human history, killing required almost no physical strength, no years of training, and very little courage in the traditional sense. A person could take a life from a distance without ever touching their opponent. That single shift in mechanics of violence would echo through every century that followed. Industrial and modern evolution, the machine learns to aim faster. For roughly 3 centuries after the matchlock, firearm technology improved only incrementally. The flintlock, developed in France around the early 1600s, replaced a burning wick with a spring-loaded flint that struck steel skill to create a spark, making guns more reliable in wet or windy conditions. The flintlock became the dominant firearm mechanism for nearly 200 years, arming soldiers from the American Revolution to the Napoleonic Wars. Then, in the early 19th century, a Scottish clergyman named Alexander Forsyth invented percussion cap system around 1807, using a small charge of mercury fulminate that exploded reliably when struck, regardless of weather. This innovation paved the way for one of the most consequential leaps in firearm history, the revolver. In 1836, an American inventor named Samuel Colt patented a revolving cylinder mechanism that allowed a single gun to fire multiple shots without reloading between each one. Colt's revolver became iconic in the American West and transformed personal combat, but the truly seismic shift came later in the century with the development of fully automatic weapons. In 1884, an American-born inventor living in Britain, Hiram Maxim, unveiled the Maxim gun, the world's first practical, fully automatic machine gun. It used the recoil energy from each fired round to automatically eject the spent cartridge and load the next, allowing it to fire up to roughly 600 rounds per minute. Maxim reportedly built the weapon after a colleague told him that the key to making a fortune was inventing something that would let Europeans more easily kill each other. His invention was used with devastating effect during European colonial campaigns in Africa and later in the trenches of World War I, where machine gun fire turned open battlefields into killing zones and forced armies into years of static trench warfare. The 20th century accelerated everything. World War I introduced mass-produced bolt-action rifles and machine guns on an industrial scale. World War II brought the first true assault rifles, most notably Germany's Sturmgewehr 44, which combined the rapid fire of a machine gun with the portability of a rifle. This design directly inspired Soviet engineer Mikhail Kalashnikov, a tank commander wounded in battle, who in 1947 designed the AK-47, a weapon so simple, reliable, and cheap to produce that it became and remains the most widely used firearm on Earth, with estimates suggesting well over 75 million units manufactured worldwide. In the United States, Eugene Stoner's design for the AR-15, developed in the late 1950s and later adopted by the U.S. military as the M16, became the foundation for the most popular civilian rifle platform in modern America. What had started as a monk's failed search for immortality had, in barely 1,000 years, become an object manufactured by the millions, engineered down to fractions of a millimeter, and debated in the highest chambers of government. Today, the numbers are staggering. Research from the Small Arms Survey estimates there are over 1 billion firearms in civilian, military, and law enforcement hands worldwide, with a vast majority, well over 80%, held by civilians rather than governments or militaries. The United States alone accounts for a disproportionate share, with estimates suggesting Americans own more than 390 million firearms, more guns than there are people in the country. The modern firearm has also entered an entirely new frontier, digital manufacturing. Since the 2010s, 3D printed firearms and computer-controlled milling machines have made it possible for individuals to manufacture untraceable weapons at home, challenging centuries of regulatory frameworks built around tracking guns through factories and dealers. Meanwhile, smart gun technology firearms equipped with biometric locks or RFID chips that only allow authorized users to fire them represents an attempt to bring 21st century safety engineering to a fundamentally old design. The gun today sits at the intersection of nearly every major societal debate: constitutional rights, public health, criminal justice, foreign policy, and technological ethics. It is simultaneously a tool of self-defense, a symbol of national identity in some cultures, an instrument of law enforcement, and, in the wrong hands, an engine of tragedy. Few inventions in human history carry such contradictory weight protector and destroyer. Built from the exact same chemistry discovered by monks who were only looking for a way to live forever. It is a strange kind of irony that the search for eternal life produced one of history's most efficient instruments of death. What began as three simple ingredients, sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter mixed by hand seeking to defy mortality, ended up becoming the very thing that could end it in an instant. From a bamboo fire lance on the Song Dynasty battlefield, to the bronze hand cannon that survived 8 centuries in ground, to the matchlocks that broke samurai cavalry charges, to the machine guns that buried a generation in the mud of Europe, to the assault rifles carried today on nearly every continent. The gun story is really the story of human ingenuity chasing the oldest and most dangerous question there is: how much power can one person hold in their hands? The next time you see a firearm in a film, a news report, a museum case, or a policy debate, it's worth worth remembering that it began not as a weapon at all, but as a mistake made by people trying to live forever. In a sense, they succeeded. Their invention has outlived every single one of them by more than 1,000 years, and it shows no sign of disappearing anytime soon. If you found this video fascinating, hit subscribe and drop a comment with a history topic you want explored next. And if this video teach you value, leave a like so more people can find it.